How many of you know yourself to be a radiant spiritual being? Do you lose sight of it from time to time? Do you live with anybody who points out the fact that you lose sight of it from time to time? See if you resonate with this. A driver was being tailgated by a stressed out woman on a busy boulevard. Suddenly, the light turned yellow and the driver quickly stopped, even though he could have moved on through the yellow light. The tailgating woman was in a big rush, and therefore she was very irritated. She honked on the horn, she lifted her hand through the sunroof with some sign language, and was screaming her frustration out the window, just as she heard a tap on the window. She looked up and saw the face of a very serious police officer. The officer asked for her driver's and registration and ordered her out of the car with her hands above her head on the car and not to move. After a long wait and several long glances looking back at her, the officer returned and said, "You can put your hands down now." He said, "I pulled up behind your car while you were honking your horn, flipping off the driver in front of you and yelling obscenities at him. Then I noticed your World Peace license plate holder, the What Would Jesus Do bumper sticker, the Follow Me to Sunday School other bumper sticker, and the Make Peace Not War emblem on your trunk. So naturally, I assumed your car had been stolen." Can you relate? Often there is some dissonance between what we put on our bumper sticker and say we stand for and perhaps what we do in any particular time. And sometimes the way that we show up really may not reflect the truth of who we are. And it's those closest around us who are most likely to lovingly or not so lovingly point that out. And we are the ones that point that out to them as well, probably. And so one of the greatest spiritual opportunities is learning how to close that gap, to reduce the turnaround time of when we get upset and when we can get ourselves centered again. Not that we don't get angry or upset. That's definitely a healthy expression. It's just a matter of where do we project it and what do we do with those things. And so part of spiritual opportunity is really learning that. And that's also one of the greatest spiritual challenges, is in learning that and closing that gap and closing that sometimes what feels like an incredible distance. The Buddhists have a saying. They say, "May your practice time on the cushion be the same as your practice time in life." May what you practice in your time of meditation and prayer and on your cushion, may you be able to carry and hold that practice throughout your day. And so today, that's what we're going to talk about, is keeping your spirit lifted. And what I would say is learning and becoming more conscious of the times that we are living out of our light and our radiance or living out of our shadow. You see, we are either projecting our light and our presence and our radiance, or perhaps we are projecting our shadow. And so to know ourselves as that spiritual radiant being. And so if you think about it, what causes you to feel most uplifted, most filled with life and light? What causes you to feel the most radiant? Sometimes we look at people that are in love and we say they are just glowing in love. Or when women are pregnant, it's very common for us to say, "You are literally radiant with light, with that new life within you." Perhaps it's a time when you accomplish something really important, or you've just had an interaction that you feel really good about, and it's really easy to feel that light, to feel that radiance. Or maybe you connect with someone who really has the capacity to help bring it out in you. And then conversely, are you aware what causes you to pull your light back, to lose sight of it, to be less radiant? You know, in the times of challenge, when we face our challenges in life, you would think that it would be natural for us to shine even brighter, that in times of challenge to be even more radiant. But I think for most people, when we face challenges, that tends to be the time that we sort of dim our own light. We lose sight of our radiance and we begin to not really live from our radiance, but perhaps we're living more from our shadow. And so do you know yourself as a radiant spiritual being? There's a couple of scriptures that are very similar. Would you give me the first slide? In the Gospel of Matthew, it says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house." And then very similar in Luke, "No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it away in a cellar, nor under a basket, but on the lampstand, so that all those who enter may see it." And so when you think about it, in our life, what is that bushel? What would it be that would obscure our light? What could possibly, if we are the light, then what could possibly keep that light potentially from shining so that we're not radiating it? Well, if you're like me, do other people's opinions ever get next to you? Circumstances, conditions, the past, fears, projections, feeling like we're not ready, we're not enough, we're not fill in the blank. That's what I call living from our shadow, living from our something's missing instead of living from our radiance and rather than from our light. And so it's a matter of learning to always be connected, to realize that we are that light and to let that light shine. Would you show me the next slide? This comes from Lao Tzu, who said in the 500 BC era, "The human spirit has its source in the divine foundation within, which must be permitted to flow freely through man." It must be permitted to flow through us, that we are the light, this light is within us, we are radiant beings. How many of you do you know that you go to a restaurant or perhaps frequent a place or you have a friend that you like hanging around them because they are radiant beings? That when you leave their presence, you somehow feel lifted. No matter what is going on in their life, they have the capacity to leave everyone around them in a state where you just feel lifted. And how easy is that for you to keep yourself in that state? That it's who we are and then allowing it to flow through us. And so today we're going to look at three very practical ways that we can begin to connect with the light. If we already are this light, then what would cause us to dim our own light or to lose the feeling of that light? And so the first thing we can do is to begin to pay attention to our face. You know, it's a universal way that we communicate. Even if two people speak different languages, if you smile, people know what you're saying. If you look like something stinks, they don't want to go over there. If you look shocked, maybe we express so much just with our face. There's a scripture in the Old Testament that talks about Moses. And it says that, I'll read you from Exodus. "When Moses came down from Mount Sinai carrying the 2 tablets of the testimony, he didn't know that the skin of his face glowed because he had been speaking with God. Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, and they saw his radiant face. That his face was so radiant, other people could see it." We see that in people. You see that radiance in people. I remember when I lived on Maui, when I first moved to Maui, I lived in a little town called Paia, and I was really close to the water. And every morning it was such a joy. I knew I wouldn't live there but a few years, and so I really soaked it up. Every morning I would get up and I'd walk down to the ocean. I'd go behind a Buddhist temple and sit and meditate. And if I had time, I'd then go over to a place called Mana Foods, and I'd get one of their fresh-made juices and just spend a little more time. Well, that was one of those mornings. I had great meditation, great fresh squeezed juice, and I was walking back, and I just felt filled with this radiant presence, and everybody I passed just smiled, almost to the point of It was real noticeable. And I thought, wow, I was really in the zone today. I'm just really radiating this light. And then I got home, and the fresh juice I drank was beet juice, B-E-E-T. And so I had this red mustache. You've heard of a milk mustache? I had a beet red mustache. My next thought was, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. How many people did I was so proud in the light. I was just smiling. And of course they smiled back. I looked like an idiot. But I thought about that. I thought, did it really matter that maybe I cheered, I brought up their day. And what if we all went around and could stay connected? That one of the greatest things you can do, there's actually a whole body of literature that studies the power of a smile. They've studied the baseball cards of baseball players and determining, based on their smile, it says a lot about the person's longevity, how well they play, what they'll perform consistently, that a smile. And so one simple practice is to pay attention to your face. What is your face saying? And to pause for a moment and to smile, not in a fake sense, but how many of you can always think about at least one thing to smile about? If you can't, please see me after church. You are upright and vertical. So if we think about at least one thing, pause for a moment and smile. And when you do that, it connects with that radiance and allow it to shine. Mother Teresa said there is just no understanding the power that one smile can make, the difference that one smile can make. So paying attention to our face and what are we radiating through our face. The second thing that we pay attention to is our heart. What is my heart radiating? What is my heart saying? There was a story, a movie a few years ago called Like Water for Chocolate. Did anyone happen to see that movie? The neat thing about it, one of the main characters in the story is that she would cook. And whatever mood she was in, whatever was in her heart, she would infuse that into the food. She didn't know it at first. But if she was sad and crying, when people started eating her food, they would all start crying. If she was filled with laughter when people ate her food, they would all start laughing. If she was really passionate or angry, whatever she was feeling, she was infusing that into the food. And to me, it was a beautiful outpicturing in an overly dramatic way, but it's true. Whatever is in our heart, we are truly infusing into our lives. And to be in that place, would you give me this next slide? It was Rumi that said, find the sweetness in your own heart, then you may find the sweetness in every heart. Isn't that true? There's a saying that says, hurt people hurt people. That hurt people. And when we find ourselves hurting, we're more likely to show up in that way. So to tend to our heart, what is our heart radiating? What is our heart telling us? There's a story about a man who was taking a trip to Africa, and he described himself as a type A personality. He had 2 weeks in Africa, and so he did his research. He had this tight schedule, everything he wanted to do, everything he wanted to see, all planned out. When he arrived, it was going to be a 7-day journey. They were first making the first week, and so he was in a real hurry to get where they were going. Some of the local Africans packed the luggage and were traveling with his group, with the caravan, to help them along and to carry their luggage and assist in different ways. So the first day, they went very, very fast. Day 2, the same thing, traveling, doing everything on his agenda. Day 3, the same thing, very Western world. Let's go, let's see this, let's go. The 4th day, they got ready to leave, and all the African people were sitting under a tree. And the man said, let's go. Why are they waiting here? And he said, they cannot leave yet. And he said, what do you mean they can't leave? We're going to get behind schedule. Let's go. He said, they said their soul needs to catch up to their body. They will not leave until their soul can catch up with their body. How often their soul catch up with their body and that whatever they did, their belief was they must be able to do it with their whole heart and their whole soul. How powerful would that be if we would take a break every time we realized my soul needs to catch up with my body? For some of us, we probably feel like we may not come out for a season. And I think that tells us something. That tells us to learn to slow down and to say, what is it? What is my heart? What is in my heart? And if I am the radiant light, what is keeping me from radiating that light? So what is my face telling me? Me. What is my heart telling me? And then lastly, what are our hands telling us? You know, our hands often symbolize how we are of service in the world. Just like we were talking about Kat. She may not necessarily use her hands that much, but she is of service in many, many different ways in the world. Many of you serve in many, many different ways. One way that you serve may be by smiling. It may be taking time to connect with someone and say thank you. Hello. How's your day? How are we serving? I know a woman who broke her ankle, and she had to get, after the surgery, she still needed to get to work every day. She lived in California. She wasn't able to drive because her ankle was healing, but she realized if she could just go down the street a little bit and get to this one particular bus stop, she could get to where she needed to go. And so she did that. And the first day she got on the bus, by the time she arrived at work, she realized she was in a better state of being than when she started out. The second day, the same thing. She made her way down to the bus stop, she got on the bus, and she went to work. And she started paying attention to the woman driving the bus. And she just noticed that the woman driving the bus seemed to have something that was contagious, that every passenger who got on the bus seemed to somehow be more lighthearted, happier. And day after day, she noticed she felt better, and everybody else on the bus seemed to be feeling better. So one particular day, she heard the woman in front of her ask the bus driver, she said, "You are always so happy. Where do you go to church?" And the woman said, "I don't. This is my church. These are my people." And she said, "You are so happy." And she said, "When I started this job, I had resentment because I wanted another job. And I thought, that's not going to be a lot of fun, picking people up and dropping people off, just giving people a lift." And she said, one day the thought occurred to me, what if I reframed it? What if I saw myself as lifting spirits rather than giving people a lift? And she said, and I realized that in order to do that, the first spirit I had to lift was my own. That when I step on this bus, that this bus is my sanctuary, that these are my people, this is how I serve. And the way I keep my spirit lifted is by seeking to lift the spirit of another. And I thought that was a beautiful story of how each and every day in those many, what appears to be a simple way, yet is truly such a profound way that we are lifting the spirit of another at the same time we're lifting our own spirit. And so what does it mean to you to live your radiance? And where and what in your life is calling you to let go, to allow more light to come through? We want to anchor this with a song that will allow us to begin to practice this week. Unity co-founder Myrtle Fillmore said, "Work is for self-expression, the development of God-given faculties and powers, and for helping those about us." Gil Gibran said, "All work is empty save when there is love." That to be the light of the world, to realize that we are this light, is to bring mindfulness, to be constantly radiating. Not in a way when we're trying to manufacture it. Because you see, when an individual tries to manufacture energy, it becomes what I call manufactured energy. Have you ever tried to self-manipulate or give something that you just didn't have to give? It just doesn't feel good. And the person on the other end can feel it too. But what the law of life says is that we are love, we are light, we exist in an infinite field. And so as we begin to bring awareness to what is my own face telling me, what is my heart telling me, what is my ideas about how I serve telling me, it's an opportunity to let go and let this love flow through us. Listen to the words of this song that we'll sing together that says, be the light. Be the light, be the light. Are we in the key of D? We are now. Be the light, be the light. Let the flame that burns inside of you change somebody's life. Be the